This is Wavlink's 5 Gigabit Ethernet to USB-C adapter. After reviewing it, my biggest takeaway is that I don't understand why 5 Gigabit adapters like these are not much more popular by now. It's plug and play on a Mac, but Windows and Linux need a driver before the adapter will work. Power draw is about 3 watts at idle and 4.5 watts under load, which I would say is about average for these kinds of adapters. For reference, my Mac Mini has a built-in 10 gigabit NIC that uses about 1.5 watts when connected and 2.5 watts under load, but there are efficiencies in not having to deal with the USB-C interface. Putting the thermal camera on the device shows it manages heat effectively well. In this picture you can see the USB-C to A adapter on the left, my Mac Mini and the hotspot it's left on the desk after running under some load. And then finally on the right is the Wavlink 5 gigabit adapter, which you can see doesn't get very hot. I bought 2 of these adapters so that I could open one up and take a look inside. There really isn't much to them, just a little circuit board with a heatsink on both sides. The main chip is the Realtek RTL8157, which isn't very widely supported by default on most operating systems except Mac. And if your primary goal is to get faster than 1 gigabit plug-and-play network on most platforms, then you're probably better off with a 2.5 gigabit adapter using the Realtek RTL8156, which seems to have more built-in driver support on more platforms. The device needs a 10 gigabit USB port to get the full speed on offer. I ran performance tests and got a measured 4.5 gigabits per second in both directions using iPerf. I did discover a weird issue with my M4 Mac Pro Mini, where if I connect it to the front-facing ports, I get full speed inbound, but a severely restricted outbound speed of less than 1 gigabit. Moving the adapter to the Thunderbolt 5 ports on the back of the Mac made the issue go away. I suspect the problem is macOS or driver related, and it'll go away in a future macOS update. You can plug the adapter into a 5 gigabit USB port instead of a 10 gigabit one, and it still works. The Ethernet link comes up at 5 gigabits. It just won't be able to transmit or receive at that speed because the communication overhead of USB sort of adds enough that it slows it down. iPerf testing showed 3.1 gigabits per second, which is still plenty faster than 2.5 gigabit if you're just looking to eke out that little bit more speed. Compared to a 2.5 gigabit adapter, it obviously runs twice as fast, but it still runs on the same Cat5e cabling, so you'll get more out of your ducted cabling if it's Cat5e. Compared to Wavlink's 2.5 gigabit adapter on Amazon, it's exactly the same price, so you're not even paying any extra for it. To be fair, the switch that it plugs into will cost more than a similar 2.5 gigabit switch. An 8-port 2.5 gigabit switch can be bought for about $60 on Amazon, which is only about $8 a port. You can't buy a 5 gigabit switch, so if you want to exploit the extra speed, you need a 10 gigabit switch, which has multi-gig speed capability. Don't worry, all new switches pretty much support multi-gig, and multi-gig just means it'll connect at 10, 5, 2.5, and 1 gigabit, depending on the network adapter that's plugged into it. A cheap 8-port 10 gigabit switch is about $250, so $40 a port. Adding the cost of the adapter and the switch together, you get about $32 for a 2.5 gigabit and $64 for 5 gigabit. So going twice as fast costs you basically about twice as much. The added bonus is that obviously owning a 10 gigabit switch means you're a bit more future-proof. At the other end of the speed spectrum, if you compare this against 10 gigabit USB Ethernet adapters, it's got significant advantages there as well. The cheapest brand name 10 gigabit adapter that I could find is the Acacias 10 gigabit Ethernet to USB adapter, and it's currently at $130. And I found a super cheap no name brand that I didn't recognize at least, for $95. So the Wavlink 5 gigabit adapter is about a quarter of the price or less, and if you add the cost of the network port in, the 5 gig adapter is less than half the price to less than a third of the price, depending on whether you use the brand name or non-brand name one. The downside of 10 gigabit adapters is they don't work at all without USB 4 or a Thunderbolt port, so you can't plug them into a slower port, unlike the Wavlink, and just get a slower speed. This isn't much of a problem for Mac because they've all got Thunderbolt ports, but it is a problem for PC because not all laptops or PCs have USB 4 or Thunderbolt ports. Also, at least in theory with 10 gigabit, you need Cat6 or Cat6e cabling to get the 10 gigabit speeds. Although in practice, you can use Cat5e cabling successfully a lot of the time, and I've done a video on this, a link for which should be appearing on the screen now. Like I said at the start of the video, I don't really know why 5 gigabit adapters like this are not more popular by now. They're as cheap as 2.5 gigabit adapters, they're faster, and they're totally backwards compatible. The only real downside I've found is the lack of built-in driver support on non-Mac platforms, and honestly, installing a driver isn't very complicated. So if you're planning on buying a USB to 2.5 gigabit Ethernet adapter, consider buying this one instead. I've put affiliate links to all the devices I've described in this video down below, so please feel free to click on them and I will get a small commission if you purchase something. Thanks for watching.